So this tutorial is on making a ranunculus. This is one of my favorite flowers of all time. I just think it's just so beautiful, and it's definitely a different look than other flowers, rather than the rose or the peony, and it's rather a complex flower as well, and it has, this one approximately has 45 petals on that, on this, and you can certainly add more if you wanted to. So it just depends on how big or how small you want it to be, and also the size of your styrofoam ball. Alright, so what I'm going to be starting with are these 5 colors, and the first color I'm going to be starting with is the darkest green, and then I'm going to move on to a medium green, which is 4 petals, so 4 petals, 4 petals, and the lightest green, which is 4 petals. The light pink is actually a mixture of the darker pink and the lighter green. And this is so that there's a transition between the light green and the dark pink. So it's kind of two of the colors kind of making this muddy type of pink. And you can have as many transitions as if you wanted to. You could have a lighter pink in between here, or a medium-sized pink if you wanted to. I'm just going to stick with these 5 colors for this tutorial. And then also the cutters that I'm using are a bit of they're a rounded triangle shape. And I'm going to be using the 3 of these. So small, small, medium, medium, and then the large. The large I will not be using this time. But like I said, it depends on how big you want to make it, but the size that I have is just perfect for these 3. And then the Viener that I'm using is just the rose Viener that I use for roses. I've used other ones in the past. I've used ones for a poppy, but this works just fine. And the size of the styrofoam is 3/4 of an inch. And what I did is, to cut it, I just used a piping tip. Doesn't have to be any sort of size. And what I did is I just made an indentation, and then I just cut it around so I knew where I was cutting with my X-Acto knife. And then I inserted a hole upward and hot glued it, and then took that wire and then just folded it in half, or bent it in half. That way it's really not going to go anywhere. So let's get started. Alright, I'm taking the darkest green. I'm going to roll this out really thin. And I have here my pre-cut petals that have been flattened. So I'm just going to make 4 of these. and then a circle. And this is about a 1 3/4 inch circle. And this is going to go around your bulb. So you're going to start with that. So what I'm doing here, if any of you haven't seen this before, is I just thin my edges of my petals out underneath the sealed bag here. And this kind of takes a lot of time. It kind of shortens the time of actually thinning your petals on your pad. I still do, but it just makes it a lot easier. And then keep in mind that the thinner your gum paste is, the easier it's gonna thin out. All right. So I'm gonna put a bunch of Crisco on this little bulb here. And I'm just gonna wrap this around the bulb. It might, as you can see, it's kind of tearing. That's fine. I just want something for the petals to adhere to. It's kind of, I might have put too much Crisco on. And I'm just pressing it so it just sticks. Or just molding it in there. All right. And then on the flat part, what I want to do is I just want to make kind of a little indentation. And this will kind of be, this will be the center of your ranunculus. Ranunculuses, they kind of, in the center, they seem to have kind of a little nub popping out of it. So obviously that would be like the pestule or something like that. So, and I just used, I think this is a number 8. So no big deal. These are easy to get a hold of. So I'm going to start with all the green petals. And I'm just going over them just really quickly, just making sure that those edges are nice and thin. And my ball tool is half on the gum paste, half off. And if I have more than one small petal, I like to put them in the Viener all at once. It really makes a difference in time, especially if you're making more than one. And then I'm just going to cup them just very gently at the edge, right at that bottom. And then I want to wet this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this just right at the little nub there. And I'm just going to let it sit there because I want the second one to lay underneath this one. If they want to fall, just take your brush and just put a little water there. All right, so you're going to have a little square shape there. All right. And then what I'm going to do to get rid of that excess, and you want them tight as well. And this is what makes them tight, is just pinching the end of that petal. And then I'm going to just trim that off. And then I'm just going to ball these all together so that I could just continually put them on. So then I'm going to add the second color. And I want to cover, oops, that might not be wet enough. I'm going to cover the seam, and I want to have it kind of lifted up a little bit, if you can see that. I'm actually covering the first 4 petals. And then I'm just going to go around and cover that one as well. So at this point, I am going to pinch the excess off. And then from the last one, you'll be able to tell what is the last one because it'll be in between or underneath 2 petals instead of this one tucked underneath. And then I'm just going to go over and I want to keep the tip of this new color at the same level as the previous. So I'm basically going in a spiral effect. Get rid of that excess. And I'm just kind of smoothing that down. Then we're going to move on to the light pink. So I will have an equivalent of 18 petals of the small light pink altogether. So I'm going to continue on where I left off, which was right at this petal. Okay, and I know this because that one, the actual first petal, is underneath the second and the last. So I'm going to place this above the green. Okay, so at this point, you'll start to notice that you'll actually end up having kind of a concaved effect where it's, you can look down in there and see where you first started, the little nub, and that's kind of what you want. And then from there, once I'm finished with this row of pink, I'm going to start going farther down. And this will take practice. Like I said, it's a rather complex flower, tons of petals, but the effect is just so beautiful. So I'm just going to continue where I left off, and I'm going to go further down just a little bit. Not really too much, but I do want to see the pink, the previous pink layer underneath. So as you can see, I'm seeing several of the layers underneath, and as I'm going along, I'm just going a little farther down. So then this has come to an end, and I'm going to continue the darker pink right where that petal is underneath the first and the last. And then I'm going to get rid of this excess as well. So I'm just going to pinch. And then I'm going to just take those little peaks that form and just smooth those out. So it does have kind of a strange shape to it. But as it fills out, you'll understand why it ends up being this way. And as the petals get larger, it won't always look like this. All right, so then I'm going to continue from where I left off. And I'm just going to continue the process of just going further down. Now this wants to fall, and it's probably because I just didn't wet it far enough. So I'm not going to wet the whole thing because I do want it to start to open, but I also want it to stay on, so I'm just putting that right underneath the layer before that. Alright, so here we are. We have one full layer of the darker pink. And then this is when we're going to start to open up the flower. So we're going to add some space in between these petals. And at this point too, you can take a small little tool. This is just anything that you can use to get in between your petals, just to kind of get them away from the previous layer, just to get some space in there. Alright, so from here, in order to get some space, what I want to do is I want to have the largest petal, or the medium-sized petal, a little bit more curved and a little bit more set. So basically, I'm going to put them in one of these formers. I'm just going to let them sit for about 5 minutes or so, just long enough for them to get a nice curl to them. And if these ruffle up a bit, just because they're in such a small space, that's fine too. As those are setting up, I want to start working on these as well, just for time purposes. As if you're doing this in 2 sets, you could have your one set setting up and then start your second, and that way you can put them on faster without having to wait so long. Okay, so now I'm going to check these. And they have a nice curve to them. And I think it was about maybe 5 or 6 minutes that I had them in here. I'm going to just ball them a little bit. Okay, so then I'm going to start where I left off, which is where I have the 2 meeting and then the 1 petal underneath. So I'm just going to go a little bit farther down. And you'll start to notice that how it's kind of looking where it's opening. You're not going to really need, after a while, need to trim the excess off. It'll fit just nicely around. And then from there, I'm going to go just a little bit farther down. So at this point, I think I'm still going to trim the excess off here. Okay. So now you see we're almost down at the bottom. I'm just going to smooth that down. Now for the final 10. Now I want to place them farther below this last layer here. It's pretty much the same level as the one that I left off. But as I go around, I'm going to go farther down. And this is where this will start to open. And I'm not going to need to actually cut any excess because it actually is going to be going farther down where it's going to hit the wire. So I want to open these up a bit. And then add the last 5. And I'm just really wetting the mid part down. I don't want to go any further up than that. Okay, and so this is where I'm going, I left off. So I'm going to cover that, and I'm going to just go a little bit farther down. And the tip of the petal is going to hit where the wire starts. So now you have the final petals, and you can open these petals. If you find that they really want to open and flop on their own, just hang this upside down. And they will set, and it'll make it easier for them not to just flop everywhere. But that's what it looks like from the side. Very pretty. So next up, we are going to add the Calyx on the bottom, and then how you would go about dusting this ranunculus. Okay folks, we are going to go over how to dust your ranunculus and also create a calyx for your ranunculus. So this is pretty much what it looks like from underneath, and it's got some cuts here to kind of give it a little flair and a little texture. And we're going to go over the center part of what colors I use, and also around the edges. So first I'm going to cut out my calyx. I have here a thin piece of green. I'm going to cut that out. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip along the side here. And then I'm just going to soften the edges with my ball tool. And then you can either leave it this way or you can give it some texture. And then this is a leaf veining tool. So I'm just going to use the skinny edge and just pull that towards me. If it digs in, that's okay, it's going to be underneath, but what I'm going to do is, instead of using this skinny part, I'm going to use the one that's a little bit thicker, and I'm not going to put as much pressure. So there, it's not digging into the gum paste as it was before, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to turn that over and then wet that with my brush. And then, as you can see, I have taped my wire. And I'm just going to bring that all the way down. And it's wanting to tear. I'm going to try to get that flattened out because it is a rather thin piece of gum paste. Okay, so there we go. So as you can see on the sides, if you want to flare it out, you can. Okay. All right, right, so now we're going to go on to dusting, and I'm going to dust with 3 different colors, a dark green, a kiwi green, and then for the petals a Cosmo, so it's kind of like a bright fuchsia pink. So I'm just going to dip my brush into this fuchsia pink, and I'm just going to go over the edge and I'm just going to build that color. So I'm just flicking, just to try to create a little bit of color and just build it. So, and notice I'm not really coloring all the petals. I'm not completely covering them with dust. I really like the base color that I have. Now, if you want something really bright pink, what you're going to do is you're going to color your gum paste the color that you want, and then just enhance that color with some gum paste. I'm sorry, with petal dust. Because if I were to try to color this whole thing with this pink, it would take a long time, longer than I would like. And I don't know if I would be able to get all in there, so I don't know if it would look all that great doing that. So I'm going to touch up the inside with some dark green. Okay. And then I'm going to go for a little bit of a lighter green on the outside. So I'm going to have like a combination of a green mixing with the pink. So I'm going to do a little bit, just a little bit more touch-ups here. Okay, I really like how that looks. And I'm just going to go with that. Now, if you'd like, you can dust your Calyx a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit of red. Always seems like there's a little bit of red in flower leaves and calyxes. There we go. Like I said, really no one's gonna see this. I mean, they might see like a little shadow of it, but it really is nice to have because it completes the flower. So, so here you have your ranunculus. So have fun. Look at other colors that ranunculuses come in. They come in a variety of colors, and just have fun experimenting. All right. Thanks for watching.